I'll let you know when we can start. All right, Mr. Chair, the live stream is underway, so you can start.
Good. Good morning. Good afternoon. Despite the declared emergency in the City of Toronto, Committee of Adjustment virtual public hearings are being conducted by electronic means through WebEx, an online digital platform, and streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel. These measures are necessary to comply with physical distancing requirements and a provincial order that limits attendance at public gatherings. This will be a virtual public hearing, and participants who have registered in advance will be able to make their presentations to the committee using WebEx, an online event that is being moderated by city staff. Anyone wishing to view the hearing may do so by watching on YouTube. Participants who have registered in advance will be connecting either by their computer, a phone, or by telephone. All participants will automatically be muted on entry. When your item is called, each participant will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. Only the committee members will be participating by video. Any registered participants will be participating by audio only. We ask that you also mute your devices until you are called on to speak. We acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. In accordance with sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustments of the City of Toronto is called to order. The committee considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning bylaw that applies to property, permission to extend or alter lawful non-conforming uses, and consent to sever property to create new lots. Anyone in attendance today who wants to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure you include your name, address, and email address, because the committee and the TLAB will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email. If you don't agree with our decision, it may be appealed to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, or in some limited circumstances to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. Today, I will call each item in the order listed on the agenda. Where an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant will proceed with their presentation if required. The committee may ask questions and/or take the matter into committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant agent, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the community. I will comment when you are reaching the 5 minutes. When addressing the committee, please state your name and address and confine your remarks to the matters outlined in that application. The applicant or participant will present the application to the committee first. Please note, the committee may not entertain revisions to proposals at the hearing today. If the application is substantially revised, the committee may decide to refer it to ensure the revised application is accurate and all those entitled to notice of the application are informed of the changes. Then, individuals in support of or opposed to the application will be invited to speak. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker after they have finished their presentations. When all other speakers are finished, the applicant agent has an opportunity to rebut issues raised by the speakers. This will mark the end of the discussion. The application will then be taken into committee for a decision. Are there any declarations of interest of panel or staff members for items in the afternoon time slot?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm going to have to declare conflict on item number 21, 15 Oxford Drive. And the nature of the conflict is I am a consultant for the Mount Dennis BIA, and this is really, for all intents and purposes, it's within their boundaries.
Okay, thank you. Any other conflicts? Any deferral requests, Mr. Deputy Secretary Treasurer?
Through the chair, no conflicts from a staff perspective, and there are 2 deferral requests in the afternoon session. The first one is item 21, 15 Oxford Drive. It's a deferral request sine die at the request of the applicant to address concerns identified by community planning.
Okay, let's call on, Alex Savanu.
Hello, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, actually, the deferral request didn't come from us. It came from community planning. I believe they're still awaiting comments from one of the internal departments. So they had requested deferral just to give them time to finalize their comments, and we're okay with that. So I have no issues with agreeing to their deferral request.
Okay. All right, panel, do we have a motion for a deferral? Donald? All right, Stan? Okay, do we have a seconder for a deferral motion? Michi? All right, thank you. All in favor? You have your deferral. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, the second deferral request is item 26. This is 84 MACLEOD Street. It's a deferral request at the request of the applicant in order to revise their application to properly identify variances.
Okay, number 26. Yes. Okay, Frank Pentesta. Mr. Pentesta, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, can we just have your name and your address for the record?
Of course. It's Frank Volpentesta. I live at 24 Sanderson Avenue in Toronto.
All right, and you're asking for deferral?
Yes, there was a variance that was missed through the PPR process, and we'd like to address it and make sure that it, meets with the city standards.
So the notice therefore was incorrect, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, all right, let's go to Frank Collin.
Mr. Chair and members, Frank Collin is not present on the call at this time.
Okay. All right, do we have a motion for deferral? Yes, Donald? All right,
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move deferral to enable the agent to capture the required variances.
all right, we have a seconder.
I'll second that motion.
All right, Laura, all in favor? Have your deferral, sir, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Deputy Secretary Treasurer, is there another deferral request?
Through the chair, there are no more, just those 2 deferral requests.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay, let's go back to number 22, 41 Superior Avenue. This is an application to obtain consent to sever the property into 2 residential lots. And also for minor variances with respect to the application. Christian Chan.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. This is Christian Chan here, C2 Planning, the land use planning consultant and agent on behalf of the owners, Janet and Andrew Vanderwall of 41 Superior Avenue.
All right, and your address, sir?
My address is Suite 138 at 157 Adelaide Street, West Toronto, Ontario.
Okay. Okay, so can you tell us what this is, application's about? We have some opposition.
Great, thank you, sir. Yes, so these are 2 applications, one being a consent to sever application for Part B, and I'll go through some of the materials here to ask staff to put it up on the screen. So 41A Superior, the retained lot, is already developed with a detached house and a detached rear yard garage. The conveyed lot, which is proposed to be named 41B, is proposed to be developed with a new 3-story detached residential home with an integral garage. So if I can ask staff to pull up the survey, it is a corner lot. The corner lot has a frontage of 36 meters and frontage also along Superior, 47.25 meters. So this is a double lot. So the proposed consent is to sever the existing lot into 2 lots. And if I can ask staff to pull up the draft R plan, and seeking relief from the bylaw for variances to create the new detached house on the conveyed lot. So regarding the consent requested, Part A will have a frontage of 25.52 meters, and Part B is proposed to have a frontage of 9.97 meters. It's 10.5 meters on the survey, and I'll get into that in further detail. Again, the existing home on Part A will be retained and not altered. We have a zoning notice that provides that there are no variances that are needed to be sought for the retained house. We do need relief from variance from the bylaw for 5 variants for the new home relating to frontage, FSI, main wall height, front yard setback, and platform encroachment. So there's going to be 2 parts to my presentation with respect to the consent, and then of course the minor variance application. So we've had discussions with ECS, Engineering and Construction Services, which provided comments from Transportation Services. So if I can ask staff to pull up the May 13th ECS report. The application was required to be coordinating the location of the hydro pole. Toronto Hydro has agreed to this position. There is a email on file that was submitted 2 days ago with respect to Toronto Hydro's satisfaction that the hydro pole is appropriately located, and of course being forwarded to transportation staff to their satisfaction. So ECS required us to have revised plans to put notations on the plans. So on May 12th, there was a site plan and elevation provided with respect to the elevation of the driveway, subject to transportation services comments, as well as a revised site plan to show the notations that were requested by ECS. So transportation noted that the driveway will be maintained as existing was acceptable, and that the utility pole would have to be repositioned. So we also had discussions with planning staff. I could ask staff to pull up the planning staff report on page 3. There are no objections from planning staff to the proposal and the consent to sever. Regarding the variances, the only variance that was under discussion with staff was the front main wall height variance. We explained to staff that the front main wall height variance comprises a small easterly section of the front main wall. And then the COA staff has mentioned that the approval of should the application be approved, variances be approved, that it be tied to the elevations to secure the extent of the front main wall height variance. So we're supportive of this recommendation. And then staff has also indicated to us, and as well as written in their report, that they have no remaining objections to the proposal. Regarding neighbor outreach, our clients provided letters to the neighbors in a 60-meter radius. We understand that there's a letter of opposition, and we will address their comments in rebuttal to their deputation. With respect to the variance requested for lot frontage is 9.97 meters, if I can ask staff to go back to the draft R plan, please. The required lot frontage in the zoning bylaw is 10.5 meters. As we can see here, if you can zoom into the front lot line, the proposed front lot line is 10.5 meters as measured lengthwise along the property line and as experienced on Superior Avenue. So it's just at the bottom. If you can scroll down to the Superior Avenue frontage there, we can see that. The reason why the variance and consent is triggered at 9.97 meters is because of how the frontage is measured by the zoning examiner at a point perpendicular to the east lot line. So the functional frontage of Part B will be 10.5 meters and otherwise would comply with the minimum required lot frontage. Just like to ask staff to go to page 54 of my report submitted, PDF page 54. Of note is that the proposal is within the draft major transit station area for MACLEOD station. So Part B will provide an additional dwelling unit in an area that the city determines as being a transit-oriented neighborhood. It's located in the MACLEOD draft MTSA boundary.
Mr. Chairman, sorry to interrupt, but the agent is already over their 5-minute limit.
I believe, do I have 10 minutes because I have 2 applications, just to advise staff?
It's 5 minutes per
Well,
person.
we'll give you a little leeway, but keep in mind you're over your time.
Yes, sir. I just understand that I have 5 minutes for each presentation. I'll try to go through this as efficiently as possible. So turning to the section 5124 test of the Planning Act, we provided a justification. Of course, planning staff mentioned sub-criteria C, whether the plan conforms to the OP regarding prevailing size and configuration of lots. There have been 8 other consents to sever nearby. The proposed lot frontage at 9.97 is functionally 10.5, and the proposed size of the new lot complies with the minimum lot area in the bylaw. And with regards to subcriteria F, dimension and shape of the proposed lots, the proposed lot dimensions already occur in the neighborhood, and the existing lot has an irregular shape because it's located on a corner lot. And on Superior Avenue, there are a number of lots that have irregular shapes. So jumping to the justification for the minor variances, the minimum lot frontage, as I've mentioned, is functionally 10.5 and meets the intent of the bylaw. For the maximum height of the specified pairs of main walls, if I can ask staff to turn to page 8 of the plans that are on AIC, which is the front elevation. So the main front wall height variance is for a small portion of the front main wall, comprising about 12.4% of the front main wall. And the overall building height of the proposal complies with the maximum permitted zoning height of 9.5 meters. With regards to FSI, the proposed FSI is 0.73. There are about 30 variances approved in the geographic neighborhood that are up to 0.96 that have been approved by the committee. And on Superior itself, there have been FSIs of up to 0.96 approved on Superior Avenue. And so the proposal in terms of FSI does not set a new precedent for highest FSI. For front yard setback, the front yard setbacks on Superior Avenue vary greatly. Front yard setbacks can range from 1 meter to 11.46 meters. So the front yard setback proposed is consistent with other area COA approvals. There have been 13 approvals for reduced front yard setbacks, and this is within the numerical range, as well as bringing the building closer to the Superior Street frontage, which is characteristic of both the immediate context and the adjacent context. The platform variance is for a 24 centimeters encroachment into the front yard setback. And so with all that above, I would submit to you committee members that the proposal meets the 4 tests, and that recommend that should the COA approve the applications of the conditions, the standard consent conditions be imposed, as well as that the planning condition that the approval be tied to be in accordance with the site plans and plans, and of course the conditions of ECS planning and transportation services, as mentioned in their reports. Thank you.
Thank you. Dana Fess.
Can you hear me, sir?
Go ahead, Dana.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. My name is Dana Fess. I live at 33 Superior Avenue. My wife, Danielle DiBartolo, could not make it. She could not move her meetings this afternoon, unfortunately. Thank you for allowing me to speak. In relation to this matter, 41 Superior Avenue is a corner lot, and the lot being created is between 41 Superior and 33 Superior Avenue, which is my house. That existing, that would have a great impact on the on the proposal, which is me being the longest or the near neighbor. In relation to the front yard setback, the Superior Avenue matches, or the setback that's proposed, it does match the existing house on Superior Avenue, but it is significantly forward from our house on 33 Superior Avenue. The variance for the setback of 7.95 meters, I'm in opposition with. The setback, normal setbacks create an articulated streetscape, where the proposal will create an awkward streetscape if you actually looked at the plans from bird's eye view. The building length is significantly longer than the house that I own on 33 Superior Avenue, would potentially be the longest on the street. There seems to be no similar precedent for a house on the street with no variance for this. It means there's a significant overlook into our backyard. I've reviewed this behind my garage. There's approximately 20 square meters of backyard space that would be negatively impacted by this. From the visual profile from our backyard looking to the west would be a large blank wall, and minor variances that create negative privacy and overlook conditions are not really desirable. We understand that this would not meet the test of Section 45.1 of the Planning Act. The wall facing our backyard is proposed to be siding. All houses on the street are either brick, stucco, or stone. Introducing a new building material and look on the street would be inappropriate. This would also be disproportionately affected as it's viewable from our house and directly from the only windows on our house on the west side, as well as our backyards. The mix of materials, there should be a mix of materials and not an inarticulated monochromatic wall. There is a new retaining wall proposed for the property along the line between 33 Superior Avenue and 41B. My question, will that new retaining wall be higher than the existing retaining wall? What materials are being proposed for that new retaining wall? And a solid concrete wall would not be appropriate given the character of the neighborhood, as well as the architectural stone features of the existing wall that would be demolished in the process of creating that new wall. The house itself is being proposed as a 3-story house, which is higher than the 2 houses on either side and would be the tallest house on the street. If you looked at it from an elevation perspective and grade, I measured approximately 1 meter grade differential between 41 and 33 at the front, and approximately 2/3 of a meter at the back as well. So that would significantly create a condition where this house is much taller than ours. Also, condition section 45.9 of the Planning Act would require screening from the main floor backyard deck on the side that faces our backyard. It would look right into our backyard. This effect is exacerbated by the elevation differential, which I explained earlier. Also, condition of section 45.9 of the Planning Act also prohibits any outdoor balcony or deck on the 2nd or 3rd floors, and I understand that I don't see those on the plan. That summarizes the main points that I wanted to bring to the table. Thank you.
So, Mr. Fess, I just wanted to know how the new house on the conveyed lot lines up with your house. Is it adjacent to it, or is it, what is its relationship?
So the new house, when I look at the, I guess you could say the first page of the plan, is adjacent.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions, panel? Okay, let's go back to Mr. Chan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I thank Mr. Fess's comments. I understand that Mr. Vanderwall, my client, has attempted to reach out to Mr. Fest in trying to attempt to resolve any remaining issues. But in response to the points that were raised, and I can appreciate the concerns, regarding the front yard setback, the front yard setback meets the front yard setback of the adjacent house to the north, the retained house. If this variance were to be denied, the new house would be positioned 1 meter further back, and we wouldn't require any variances for building length and can go deeper into the lot. So there's also a London plane tree that's in the rear yard of the conveyed lot that would be impacted should we position the building further to the rear. With regards to building length, I can appreciate the concern. However, we don't have a building length variance before the committee for consideration. So with my respectful submission is that there are no impacts related to the requested building length because there aren't any variances related to it. The proposed building length is less than the length of the 41 Superior house. And when viewed from 33 Superior, we can see the angled nature of the rear main walls. We would extend slightly past 33 Superior's rear main wall. If I can ask staff to pull up a site plan, and we could see that relationship. Site plan number Z1, if I can reference a drawing. With regards to the wall facing number 33's rear yard, I can appreciate the matters of taste and architectural styling that could be afforded to and can be discussed between neighbors. The wall facing the neighbor's house is proposed to have a mix of materials such as brick, aluminum, panel board, and siding. And of course, we can see on the site plan there's a wall jog, and we can see some unarticulated or monochromatic wall. Wall materials are not before the committee of adjustment, but I can certainly appreciate that continued discussion could be had between neighbors to address this concern. With regards to the retaining wall is not, and I can confirm, will not be higher than the existing retaining wall that's on the east lot line. The wall at the front property line of 41 Superior also has a capped solid concrete wall, and this will be continued for the retaining wall for the driveway on the east lot line of the proposal. With regards to house being 3 stories, we don't have a variance for a number of stories or overall building height. We do have a main wall height variance for a very small portion of where that jog is adjacent to the east property line. That comprises 12.3% of the main wall height and facing the front. Otherwise, the proposed height complies with the bylaw, and as such, any impacts related to overall building height aren't before the committee for consideration. With regards to section 45.9 conditions that the committee may impose, my client is agreeable to providing screening on the east side of the rear deck pursuant to the neighbor's request. And then with regards to concerns for outdoor balconies and decks on the 2nd and 3rd floors, there aren't any proposed. However, should the committee decide to secure that as a condition that can be imposed as well, my clients would be agreeable, but just to confirm that none of those elements are proposed on the new home. And those are my submissions, and thank you for giving me the time to respond.
All right, thank you. Any questions, panel? Okay. So, have comments? A motion? Yes.
I'm satisfied with what's being proposed here as, well, first off, I would like to say that this is an appropriate severance, and housing is a need. Additional housing is much needed in Toronto, and it's nice to be able to find something that a proposal such as this, which minimizes the impact for those severances. And I believe all of the variances are minor, and I believe the applicant did a good job in describing that. The only, I believe, valid concern raised by the neighbor is the privacy screening, and as the applicant is willing to provide that, I'd like to add that as a condition. So I'd like to propose the approval of the severance and of the minor variances. And the conditions to go with that would be the provision of the privacy screening on the deck, tying planning condition to the south elevation and site plans dated January 21st, 22, the two transportation conditions, and the usual consent, the usual ECC consent conditions related to a severance. I think I've covered it all. I hope I have.
Do we have a seconder? Donald, all in favor? Have your approval. Thank you.
Am I too late? I think we missed the engineering and construction services conditions as well.
No, I think Stan said the consent conditions, that he meant the engineering usual consent conditions.
Perfect.
Okay. Number 23. 1218 Royal York Road, to obtain consent to sever the property into 2 residential lots. Mr. Higgins,
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Nice to see you.
how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good.
Okay. So may I present, or does the committee have any questions?
Just tell us your name and your address for the record.
Of course. Peter J. James Higgins of Peter Higgins Architect Incorporated, 69 Douglas Drive in Toronto.
Okay.
Now, this proposal has been around a few times, went to the TLAB, et cetera, was approved. And we're here today simply to have the severance, well, I was going to say rubber stamp, but the severance previewed and decided on. And we, as far as I know, there are no letters of objection from any neighbors. There had been a lot of objection leading up to TLAB. We believe that this severance makes good sense. The properties are very deep, and there are examples of severance, similar severance just to the south of us with townhouses, and then multiple townhouses just next door to that one. So we're right on the edge of the pure residential zone in this part of Royal York Road, and just up from a higher density. So we think that this small request is well worth it, because it's adding a housing stock to the neighborhood, and the plan having a secondary suite in the basement of each for rental.
Okay, so you have no variances with respect to part 1 and part 4?
No, we don't. This is all about severance. All of the variances were dealt with at TLAB.
Oh. All right, panel, have any questions?
I just have a question. Perhaps it's a question for staff. The only planning comments I see is the planning comments from November still apply, but I don't see any planning comments from November in my package.
Through the chair, if you'd like, we can try to pull that up if you want to wait. Would you like to see the November previous comments?
Well, it's just, I mean, the way it is now, it's essentially no comment, is the way I'm taking it.
Well, they said they have no objections, so I guess they didn't make any comments either.
I mean, I'm going to take it as no objection, no comment, but there is a statement that says that they have comments, so I just.
Yeah, it says the November comments still apply.
It'd be nice to see them, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it says the November comments still apply, and we don't have those November comments in our package. I made a note of that, actually.
If you, let
That's
me,
right.
let me try to pull it up if you'd like. I'll try pulling it up and sharing the screen.
Thank you.
Through the chair, I could share my screen if you wish, but I can read it to you right now. It's very short. It's an email from Community Planning indicating planning staff have no objections to the proposed severance application. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just, you know, there's one of the benefit of that, so. Based on that, I'm willing to move approval unless anyone has any other questions.
No questions.
Okay, do we have a seconder for the motion?
I'm happy to second that.
All right. All in favor?
Through the chair,
Approve.
just as a point of clarification, this is subject to the standard consent conditions, ECS and
Yeah.
ECS, sorry.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yes, thank you. You have your approval, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and committee. Have a good day.
Thank you. Item number 24, 55B Long Branch Avenue. This is a consent request to obtain consent to sever the property into 2 residential lots.
Mr. Chair,
Vlad Minku. Yes.
Mr. Chair, remember, I just want to bring to your attention that at last check, all area residents were present on the call.
Okay, so there's 5 area residents. Okay. Mr. Minshew or Vlad Minshew, I don't.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Valentin Vladiminku, and I am the owner of the property along with my wife, and I reside at the property, 55B Long Branch Avenue.
Okay. Can you tell us what you are doing here or want to do?
Yep, could I get the staff members to pull up my presentation? It's an 8-slide presentation. That's the one. Okay, so the reason for this application is because my family of 5 live in one of the units of the existing multiplex, and we are finding that we have outgrown the space. I also want to mention that I do hold a Bachelor of Architectural Science degree, as well as a BSci in designer number in the province. This proposal seeks to sever the lot in order to keep the existing multiplex and replace the existing detached double-car garage with a modest 2-story, 1,345 square foot house. The front yard setback variance for the new house lot is very minor. The red line on this site plan shows in figure 1 shows how from the street, the proposed front yard setback for the new house results in a gradual return to the line of the front facades of houses on Dominion Road. Next slide, please. Figure 2 and 3. Yep. Looking at figure 2 and 3, you can see that this house presents itself as a quaint cottage and has a traditional design which complements other homes on the street. This house is in keeping with the neighborhood as we satisfy 12 of the 14 applicable character guidelines. You can also see how the front yard variance is practically imperceivable from the street and also does not cut any lines of sight. Next slides, figures 4 and 5, please. So the rear yard setback is also minor in impact. The proposed house back wall is a lot more forward than that of 19 Dominion. Figure 4 also shows how overlook and privacy issues were dealt with by moving the second floor windows facing 55 Long Branch above eye level. Per Figure 5, there is also a tall, very dense grapevine between us and 55 Long Branch that provides a visual barrier. This could be replaced with a fence if more desirable by the neighbors for visual privacy. Community planning has stated that they are concerned only with the rear yard setback of the proposed house, but not that of the multiplex. Considering the multiplex is a larger structure and its proposed rear yard setback is only 8 centimeters larger than that of the new house, there should not be a concerns with the rear yard setback for the proposed house, given that it is a smaller structure. Next slides, please.
Mr. Chair and members, Vlad, if you're still there, we can't hear you at this moment. Mr. Chair and members.
Sorry, next slide, please.
I'm sorry,
Sorry,
Mr.
committee
Committee of
members. We
Adjustment
just
Approval
sorry,
History.
members and Mr. Chair. We lost connection to the room for a moment there, so we were without communications with you guys for a moment there. Sorry, and Vlad, which slide would you like us on at this point now?
The Committee of Adjustment Approval History, the next one down.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the one. Thank you. So the FSI of 0.64 for the proposed house amounts to just under 125 square meters in gross floor area. And this map and table shows other houses approved in the area for similar and larger FSIs. Of note are 48 and 5036th Street with FSIs of 0.69, which translates to GFAs of over 200 square meters. The chart shows how all these past approved applications amount to much larger GFAs. The new house would have one of the smallest GFAs, if not the smallest, approved by this committee in recent history. Next slide, please. This slide shows how the only small shade impact this proposal has is on 19 Dominion's front yard and side yard, and this is only for a minimal portion of the day after 4 p.m. The proposal casts no shadow on 19 Dominion's house or backyard. Next slide, please. So I want to make it clear that this application is not precedent setting. This precedent has already been set in our RM zone in 2010 at 41 Long Branch Avenue per the C of A decision notice, where similarly to our severance, a 15 by 30 meter lot was split into two 15 by 15 meter square lots. Since then, in our RM zoning boundary, out of 39 eligible corner lots that could have been submitted a similar severance request, none have done so in over a decade until our proposal. This shows that approval of this application will not lead to many other corner lots asking for similar severances. Future applications trying to argue similarities to this severance would have to be corner lots and have comparable benefits as this proposal. Therefore, this is not a precedent-setting application. Next slide, please. So although under a wrongful appeal, under zoning bylaw 101/2022, the orange rectangle depicted in the site plan shows by right an allowed two-story accessory dwelling unit, which is only 4% smaller in size than the proposed house. Of note are the setbacks from the lot lines, all of which are smaller than the proposed house setback. I therefore submit that the applications meet the four tests of the Planning Act and is worthy of this committee support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, panel? Okay. Amy Batoyske.
Hi there, I'm Amy Butoysk at 55 Long Branch Avenue, immediately to the south of the applicant's property.
Okay.
Shall I begin?
Yes, please.
Hi there, my name is Amy Butoysk. Thank you very much for hearing my family's concerns today. I and my family live at 55 Long Branch Avenue, immediately south of the triplex at 55B. We moved here in 2018, hoping it would be our forever house, a place to raise our daughter and stay for the long term. We had reason to believe that our neighbors opposed disruptive development on our corner and that we'd be free to enjoy our yard with its modest but comfortable space and open sky views. We've put significant time, energy, and money into making it a peaceful and private space to enjoy in these trying times. If the severance and construction of 55B goes ahead, the things that we value about our home will be severely compromised, such that I really question whether we'll be staying here. We object for the following reasons, which summarize our detailed letter to the committee. I maintain that the lot is an inappropriate size for the severance, especially with an existing multi-unit residential building on site. The existing triplex already sits on a lot that is too small for the building type, according to the city's own bylaws. The proposed severance would only crowd the corner even more, resulting in lots for both the triplex and the new dwelling of roughly half the required size, and setting a risky precedent for future severances, especially for corner lots in the neighborhood. To be explicit, we are wholly opposed to the severance of 55B Long Branch. Proposed variances are not minor. The applicants are seeking to cut existing measurements by half. Taking rear yard setbacks, for example, they seek to cut the setback from a required 7.5 meters to 3.7 and virtually eliminate all rear yard green space for both lots. This does not fit the definition of minor. The result would also be a sheer wall right up against my own yard, which is definitely not desirable. Sliding doors and smaller windows on the south side of the new building would be too close to the lot line and look into our backyard. Much worse for my family, the windows on the west-facing facade will have a clear line of sight into the primary living areas of my home, including the bedroom of my 7-year-old daughter, as well as our family room and our office. This will severely compromise my family's privacy, both inside and outside of my home. Mature trees, which are a defining characteristic of our neighborhood, help to keep our yard lush, green, and private. These would be severely damaged or removed, including our treasured maple. This is counter to the city's tree canopy targets. Furthermore, the parking plan for the existing triplex in this submission does not work in any way. It has a very long, narrow driveway. It is parking for a single car in name only, where in reality there has been minimal change from the deferred application, which featured a tandem parking pad. This is inadequate for the needs of a triplex that contains 3 self-contained 3-bedroom units, a triplex that largely functions as a short-term rental business, a triplex that regularly has 4 cars parked in the existing driveway. The parking pad is also within arm's reach of a large window facing directly into an area of my home that we use daily. This presents potential issues for my family with noise, light, air quality, and safety. It is also worth noting that this is a neighborhood with no overnight street parking. The parking proposal for the existing triplex is woefully inadequate. These are on top of the many additional concerns from trees to character shared by our neighbors and the Long Branch Neighborhood Association. City staff and our city councilor have recommended against this proposal, and it countermands the official plan in several respects. Furthermore, I'd want to verify some of the applicant's stated claims in pursuing the severance. They say they would maintain housing options, but use the triplex as a short-term rental business. They claim to want more space while proposing a build that would just barely squeeze a house into an undersized and deficient lot with no available green space. The whole process has already put a serious strain on my family. We felt bullied into accepting a severance that both city policy and community opinion agree should not happen. If it goes forward, it will be disastrous for my family to be able to live peacefully in my house. All we want is to enjoy our family home. I hope that our statements, along with those of our neighbors, our city councilor, and city staff, clearly show that this severance and construction project should not go forward. I respectfully ask that the committee refuse this application for severance and the accompanying files. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Any questions, panel? Paul Terry?
One moment, Mr. Chair. All right, Paul, go ahead. Paul, please don't mute and unmute yourself. Please let city staff be responsible for that. Paul, go ahead.
Okay, great, thank you. My name is Paul Terry. I live at 7 Marina Avenue. That's 1 block north and 1 block east of the site in question. It is close, but not in our backyard. The 55B lot starts out as too small for the existing triplex, with only 464 of the 555 square meters required for a triplex. Starting with a 17% deficient lot and then severing that lot into 2 even more deficient lots is not reasonable. The required variances are numerically large. I find referring to them as minor variances astounding. However, I recognize that the term minor is not a numerical limit for this committee, but rather is defined by potential impacts. I respectfully submit to you that in this case, the numbers are the proof of the qualitative negative impacts. As proposed, for the triplex, elements that are more than 50% deficient include the lot size, the rear setback, the rear deck setback, and the number of parking spaces. For the new detached dwelling, the lot is 47% too small, the front yard is 25% too shallow, the backyard setback is 50% too small, the driveway is too narrow, and the requested floor index is 182% of the permitted area. In short, nothing fits the lot, nor as a consequence will it fit the neighborhood. These deficiencies, when taken as a whole, do not qualify as minor variances. This project is a clear case of overdevelopment, and if approved, will cover most of the lot or lots area with non-conforming buildings and driveways. The proposed changes would destabilize our neighborhood with benefits to the applicant and costs to others. The privacy and quiet enjoyment for the immediate neighbors will be severely impacted. Headlights will shine into a neighbor's main living area. Noise will intrude as well. New side windows will invade privacy by providing new views into neighbors' existing rooms and yard spaces. Residents living in the triplex have no balconies and in the future would have almost no comfortable outdoor space to relax or play in. Remember, these are 3-bedroom apartments. It's reasonable to think that children might live there over the next 50 years. Worse, others may seek similar variances, further altering the quiet enjoyment of Long Branch as a neighborhood. I don't believe, but I'm doing this by memory because I wasn't prepared, I don't think the previous severance started with a triplex on the base. I could be wrong. The driveways as proposed will be dysfunctional disasters. The tandem parking space originally proposed has been changed primarily in name to a single parking space with a long, narrow driveway, a design that, if approved, will certainly lead to future problems. The other driveway, large black walnuts may fall, potentially damaging trees parked under the tree canopy in the proposed driveway. These variances are not desirable. The official plan for Toronto requires multi-unit residential housing to provide indoor and outdoor spaces that consider the needs of residents of all age and abilities over time. I do not see spaces for sufficient parking, play, or even passive recreation spaces on the proposed plans. The few areas that might fill that role are extremely close to the lot lines and I believe ignore privacy and noise issues. I also don't see spaces for garbage bins, bicycles, lawn equipment, or snow clearing. The density, massing, spacing, and rhythm will all be significantly different if this proposal is approved. That does not allow it to comply with the official plan. I did do a bit of a survey. I counted and checked to the very best of my ability every triplex in the surrounding area, a very fair area. I counted 43 triplexes. Every single one had at least 3 parking spaces. Many had more. Even the modestly large apartments all seemed to provide generous on-site parking. I believe the requested variances do not fit the characteristics of the Long Branch neighborhood. I think the proposed variances do not fit the intent or purpose of the city's zoning and bylaws. I believe these variances fail to fit the official plan in multiple ways. Please refuse this consent and related variances and protect our neighborhood from this destabilizing proposal. Thank you.
Mr. Terry, what is the nature of public transportation in this area?
It depends where you're going. For my wife and I, having lived here for 40 years, we both really felt required to drive because although there is public transportation, for me it made a 3-hour commute or 2 35-minute commutes, so a little over an hour in total. For my wife, it was 15 minutes versus over 2 hours. So it depends where you're going, but this isn't really a center of the city. And if you don't work in the center of the city, and of course not everybody does, you can't get back and forth. Now, the GO train is great. The streetcar isn't bad. But if you're trying to get up to the subway, it's a streetcar, a bus, and then the subway. So it really, I mean, I can illuminate further, but it's not as good as it might look on a map. Can I help more with that?
No. Well, I see the picture. Thank you.
Okay.
Christine Mercado.
Go ahead, Christine. Mr. Chair, members, Christine is present and unmuted. Christine, go ahead. Mr. Chair, maybe we'll stand Christine down for a moment and we'll come back to her once we hear everybody else.
Yeah.
Okay, Christine,
Let's
if you
go
could,
to
Mr. Chair, one moment. Christine, if you could log out and log back in and authorize the use of your microphone, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right, Andy Choles.
How do you do? How do you do? My Christine was helping me with my sound difficulties before. I'll be referring to a letter of objection from Judy Gibson in the application details.
Can we have your name and your address, please?
Yeah, sorry about that. My name is Andy Choles. I live at 12 Jasmine Avenue in Long Branch. I'm a member of the Long Branch Neighborhood Association. I'll be speaking today primarily on trees. I'd be referring to a letter of objection from Judy Gibson. It's found on page 3 of the application details of February 3rd. It was 0.39 megabytes in size. If you could call that up, I'd appreciate it. As I said, I'm a member of the board of the LBNA, and we keep ourselves active speaking out against overbuilds and the loss of tree canopy in our neighborhood. The LBNA is not opposed to sensitive renewal of housing in our neighborhood. This plan, in our opinion, is anything but sensitive. We object to the consent and variances that are being requested for 55B Long Branch Avenue. In particular, we object to the removal of a healthy city-owned 35-centimeter tree of heaven and the dramatically reduced lot area and soft landscaping or plantable space that the applicant is proposing forever to remove from this site due to the variance and the consent. The applicant is proposing to remove a protected city tree to allow for another driveway. This will increase the hardscaping and non-permeable surface on the property while removing backyard amenity space for the tenants of the multiplex. The existing tree large canopy, which now coexists and extends above and behind the overhead wires, it is unclear how well the proposed new trees would do in a long term given the interference of the overhead wires and the proposed limit of plantable space. Removing a large healthy tree to replace it with a sapling is not an acceptable trade. If you could go to the page with the picture on it. That's the wrong letter of opposition. I'll just continue. There's a photo of the tree of heaven found on the letter of objection. It's towards the back of the property off Dominion Street, and it's a very large tree, and it's a good sized canopy. We've had some discussions with this committee before about the loss of tree canopy in Long Branch. And from 2009-2018, the Long Branch has lost 56% of our tree canopy on lots that were severed and lost 24% of tree canopy on adjacent properties. Toronto has the goal to grow the tree canopy to 40%. This application is working contrary to that goal and the policies of the official plan to preserve mature trees. And we've presented in the past that the canopy loss on redeveloped lots is 55.7%, and on the adjacent lots, 24%. Long Branch has the distinct honor of having a negative 43.4% change or loss of tree canopy in our neighborhoods, so we are especially sensitive when it comes to losing trees. While many neighborhoods in Toronto have actually increased the tree canopy, Long Branch has had a huge loss. A relevant City of Toronto official plan policies in the official plan under Chapter 2 of Shaping the City, they refer to steering growth while protecting our neighborhood and green spaces from development pressures are the first layer of sound planning process for the city's future. Official plan policy 2.2.2i, protect the neighborhood green spaces. Official policy 2.3.1, healthy neighborhoods. Considered to be physically stable, development in neighborhoods will be consistent with the objective and will respect and reinforce the existing physical character of the buildings, streetscapes, open space patterns in these areas. Environmental sustainability will be promoted in neighborhoods and apartment neighborhoods by investing in naturalization and landscape improvements, tree planting, and preservation. Official Plan 3.4, the natural environment. We must not only protect the existing urban forest, but also enhance it. Protecting Toronto's natural environment and urban forest should not be compromised by growth insensitivity to the needs of the environment or the neglect. Official Policy 3.4.1d, preserving and enhancing urban forests by providing suitable growing environments for trees, increasing the tree canopy coverage and the diversity, especially of the long-lived native and large shade trees, and regulating the injury and destruction of trees. On October 2nd, 2019, the City Council adopted an item to declare a climate emergency for the purpose of naming, framing, and deepening the Council's commitment to protecting Toronto's economy, our ecosystem, and our community from climate change. Toronto has also launched its first resilience strategy that integrates Toronto's major climate and environmental plans to advance the vision of a more resilient Toronto. One of the goals of the new resilience strategy under the infrastructure is Toronto is more resilient to climate change, including the hazards of flood and heat. The Long Branch Character Guidelines speak to preserving mature trees, which are the key element of the Long Branch neighborhood character. This application, one would think, have been changed since it was deferred earlier in February. There are really no significant changes to this application. We continue to object to the consent and variances that this application is requesting for the reasons and the policies outlined in a previous letter of February 3rd, 2022. And is creating two dramatically undersized lots with insufficient soft landscaping, oversized FSI, and the applicant has made no changes to their application to comply with the official plan policies we just outlined. We echo the concerns expressed by planning and forestry and are here today to let you know our own deep concerns.
Mr. Charles, your time is up. Could you wrap up, please?
This application does not meet the criteria for consent and the variances are not minor. This application fails the 4 tests. We therefore request it be refused. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Gail Dolenko.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Gail Dolenko, and I reside with my husband, Peter Silk, at 19 Dominion Road, the property to the east of 55B Long Branch. The applicants have stated that their existing unit in the triplex has outgrown their needs and they need to sever the lot and build a new house to accommodate their growing family. But we're not really sure how these small lots are going to achieve that. We do still have concerns about the 11 remaining variances, and I'll outline what our concerns are. First of all, the proposed lot split still creates 2 undersized lots, neither of which conform to the prevailing size and configuration of lots in the neighborhood. Neither lot allows room for any auxiliary storage buildings, or we don't see any of those on the plans. And why this is key is because the applicants would still own both properties and would still be required to provide maintenance on both, which requires lawn equipment, snow removal equipment, ladders, tools, etc. All of these things which they currently own and they currently now store in their garage. But with the proposed lot split and how they have the buildings positioned, we're not sure where this would be kept. The lot size for the triplex would actually have an area that is 100 square meters less than what the minimum required lot size is for a single family dwelling. And again, three-bedroom units having on a lot smaller than a single family dwelling, plus the majority of the rear yard is going to be taken up with driveway space. The dwelling lot, the proposed dwelling lot, would have a lot area almost half of the minimum required lot area for a single family dwelling, and again, would not provide any yard space for their growing family to play in. And right now they have a moderately sized play structure. Where is that going to go? That really can't go anywhere. We do have concerns about trees. We have a very stately large black walnut tree on our property. The root system for black walnuts can actually extend 15 or more meters from the tree trunk, which far exceeds the minimum 6-meter tree protection zone. The black walnut, as you know, is protected. It does have protected status from being cut down or damaged. So our major concern is if in any excavation, what if a large predominant root is uncovered and damaged? What protection can be provided to that tree? We also have a shrub line along the property line, and there's nothing in the plans indicating any type of protection to be given to the shrub line. So we'd like information on that. The neighbor's trees at 55 Long Branch, again, are in danger of damage, and those provide us with privacy into our backyard, especially when the trees are in bloom. And damage to those trees will already jeopardize, the privacy given how closer the rear yard setback is. From a shade standpoint, I appreciate the shade study that Mr. Minshew provided, and it does show how extreme the amount of sunlight will be reduced in our front yard, and we do enjoy sitting out in our front patio between 4 and 7 p.m. So that is greatly reduced. We get ample sunlight between those times, and he did show that that is basically going to be eliminated. The parking spots, again, currently the triplex has 3 parking spots, and it has proven deficient in the past. For months on end, there have been 4 cars parked in the lot. The change to their plan, again, is now just a single long parking spot, and this will likely just lead to tandem parking, which is not allowed really for triplexes, or an increase in illegal street parking. As stated, there is no overnight street parking. There's no sidewalks on this stretch of Dominion Road, and children regularly use this to walk to James S. Bell School. So the more cars that are parked on the street or backing in and out of long driveways just provides, greater dangers. From the triplex standpoint, from a rental standpoint, since they've moved into the triplex and they've started renting out the upper and lower units through Airbnb, this actually removed 2 units from the long-term rental market. Once the pandemic hit, they had to revise that Airbnb, so they've been basically renting out on short or midterm basis. There hasn't been a long-term rental since they renovated the triplex. So we're not sure about the long-term housing solutions that they're proposing. The last one is we do have a Bell utility pole in our backyard, which services both Bell and Rogers internet and phone lines to 6 dwelling units in the area. The new single-family structure would also require wires to be run to that building. This would actually run on the entire west side of our open backyard space. And we absolutely find this unacceptable to have wires running directly over this overhead space, which is now currently clear for us. So that is not something that we appreciate. So again, finally, we respectfully ask that you refuse this application and all the accompanying files with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have Christine Mercado?
One moment, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Christine, go ahead. Christine, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, please
Well,
just speak loud and enunciate.
Okay. My name is Christine Mercado, and I'm the chair of the Long Branch Neighborhood Association. and we supported deferral of this application. However, the changes since have been minor and the consent still doesn't meet any of the 4 tests. Our position now is refusal based on the inappropriate severance, resulting in a high FSI, almost doubled the standard in one instance, and a substandard front and rear yard setbacks and substandard parking. The overbuilding does not respect and reinforce the character of Long Branch. So I see staff has pulled up my most recent letter. So if I can get them to go to page 3, please. So there are significant deficits in 6 of the 7 policies of 4.1.5. Now, the application is located in historic Long Branch Park Resort. The Long Branch Neighborhood Character Guidelines define the character defining conditions on page 27 as consistent and generous rear and side yard setbacks, sky views, private amenity space, landscaping, and mature trees with lots 35 to 45 meters deep. And I'm paraphrasing condition D, E, and F. If staff can move to page 5, please. The application does not address policy 4.1.5b, prevailing size and configuration of lots. So in the immediate neighborhood, you'll have to keep going down, staff. You'll be going to the map. The application does not address policy in the immediate neighborhood, the blocks facing the same street, adjacent blocks, and the geographic neighborhood defined by natural barriers and zoning. The prevailing lot area is bylaw or greater, which is in the light green, and exceptions exist in dark green and red. However, they predate the existing Long Branch Character Guidelines, which is clarification of OP policy 4.1.5 and was approved by City Council. So the one lot of this configuration exists in the neighborhood with proportionately small houses on it. It's important to note that no lots of this configuration have been created since. Now, for policy 4.1.c, prevailing scale and density of nearby residential properties, on page 6, we've got an FSI analysis, and the map was created by myself using city data, impact data, and walking the neighborhood. So in the neighborhood, there's 245 lots. It's RM zoning, and the prevailing character is mixed housing that's in scale with the lot, which is the key look and feel of this neighborhood. And according to the data, the prevailing FSI of the immediate and geographic neighborhood is single detached at 0.35, which is 159 lots. The OP makes room for more than one defining characteristic if it occurs in significant numbers. And so we've captured the triplexes and duplexes in dark blue above 0.35, but the data shows that the upper ceiling is less than 0.60 for 69 lots. Further exceptions are defined in semis over 0.6 in red and single detached over 0.35 in purple. And our data shows that there are only 2 larger single detached exceptions and no triplexes with the building land ratio to what the applicant is asking for. 2 exceptions, quantitatively and qualitatively, are not a significant number in the immediate context. All the exceptions, even in the broader neighborhood, were built before the approval of the character guidelines by the city in 2018, and no FSI this high has been approved and built since in this study area since. The creation of a 2-story home in what is typically a private amenity space breaks the lot patterning for the neighborhood. The large FSI and deficient rear yard setback impact the abutting neighbor's privacy and limits the ability for future landscaping and ultimately quality of life. This isn't an area that is static. Excuse me, I lost my note. This isn't an area that's static. Today, the LBNA have 4 settlements in principle at TLAB, so we're refining solutions that observe policy while addressing needs of the applicant. If you move further down, you'll see that we've included 2 recent decisions, so that's 65 40th and 77 35th Street. 65 40th is now under the review request by the applicant. However, 77 35th is now being redeveloped within the bylaws, and it's in the geographic neighborhood. So there should be no concern that refusal of this severance application will lead to Long Branch being static. We have looked at the comparable at 41 Long Branch, and it was before the guideline. Branch has grown by 11% in 4 years and significantly ahead of Toronto as a whole. Yet we have no community center, we have full schools and an undersized library, and no plans to change any of that. And that signs that the severance does not meet the criteria for consent and intensification in neighborhoods. Long Branch is not static, but a stable neighborhood with a growth plan that's still underway. We maintain the position that this severance is not appropriate according to the OP or the clarification offered by the guidelines, existing bylaws, or criteria for consent. The LBNA supports City Planning's position of refusal. We respectfully ask for the refusal of this application as cumulatively the variances are not minor. It does not meet the intent or purpose of the bylaws or official plan, therefore does not meet the 4 tests. And I'm open to questions if there are any.
Any questions, panel? All right, thank you. Mr. Minchu?
Hi. Thank you, neighbors. Thank you, LBNA, for your comments. I just do want to make one clarification that Forestry has revised their report. There is a revised Forestry report. And that was one of the reasons for the deferral last time. That tree of heaven that the LBNA was speaking about is originally, it was thought to be a city tree. The survey clearly showed that it's a privately owned tree. I have met with Forestry about that tree. They've acknowledged that it's a privately owned tree. And again, that's the only tree that is affected by this proposal. And the tree is invasive. If you were to go outside right now, I'm sure the committee members have gone by the house and you've seen this tree by the utility pole. It's every other tree right now has leaves on it. That tree has nothing growing on it right now. It provides no shade and it's almost dead. And speaking with Forestry, they're also of the same opinion that the tree can't be saved. And it's the reason why in their latest submission, they've provided condition 2, which is the removal of the privately owned tree, which is this tree of heaven in question. So in regards to green space, and again, I'm guessing they're talking about rain permeability as well. The new house footprint only takes up 4% more area on the lot than the current garage. We're also turning a lot of the existing driveway into plantable space, and the proposed driveways are also permeable. All these measurements will ensure that this proposal has little impact on the rain permeability of the lot. I believe both LBNA and the community planning are saying that due to the lot size and shape, the proposal is not in keeping with the Long Branch character guidelines, which I find is a bit of an unreasonable statement to make since these 2 parameters are actually not part of the guideline. The guidelines speak only to the look of the house and placement of the lot, which we have respected 12 out of the 14 guidelines. This is a traditional home design that complements adjacent homes. In regards to parking, transportation has reviewed the proposal and has no concerns with the 1 parking spot for the multiplex, the driveway lengths, or the amount of traffic. This expectation from neighbors that each unit should have a parking spot comes from a place of privilege, but not everyone can afford a car. We are close to transit. We are 15 minutes walk to the nearest GO station and a 3-minute walk to the streetcar. And we have the ability to rent to someone that does not need a car. This proposal does not represent overdevelopment. It is replacing the existing garage with a house that is not much bigger than it. This house will not be perceived as overdevelopment from the street due to the frontage being respected. With the recent introduction of Amendment 554 of the official plan to allow secondary dwelling units on 1 lot, this further reinforces that according to the official plan, the current lot can sustain more development. As mentioned, a precedent has already been set at 41 Long Branch for this same type of split over 11 years ago, and no one has submitted a similar application since, until our application. This shows that there is no concern for this application being precedent setting. In regards to 55 Long Branch's concerns, car noise and pollution are being improved since we have less cars on the lot now. In regards to the headlight issues, this can be easily rectified by planting a shrub or other vegetation cover. Privacy for 55 Long Branch, as I've illustrated before in the presentation, was considered by raising the 2nd floor windows above eye level, and on the 1st floor we have the grapevine that provides a visual barrier. And again, if this isn't enough, we can work with the neighbors to add further vegetation or a fence. Again, you have to keep in mind that we want our privacy as much as they do, so we're willing to work with them to find the best solution for an effective visual barrier between us. And just as a final statement, the objectors of this application talk about how the variances are high in number value, but you have to go beyond the numbers and look at the built form itself. The intent of the official plan is to go beyond the numbers and look at how the built form interacts with the neighborhood. Our proposal does not clash with the other built forms in the area in look, form, or placement. And although they may look major to some in value, the impact of our variances on the neighborhood overall is minor. I just want to reiterate that we are not a developer. This build is for our family and we plan on living here long-term, despite what the objectors may say. We have lived here since 2016 and love our neighborhood, and we strongly believe that this proposal provides the space we need while at the same time is sensitive to the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Minju, you mentioned garden, the legislation encouraging 2 houses on a lot, etc. These lots are going to be severed, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, but they may have the, it may have the appearance of 2 lots, 2 houses on a lot. So is there legislation in Long Branch for laneway houses and garden houses yet?
Again, Amendment 554 to the Planning Act does allow secondary dwelling units now. It's just the bylaw that's under appeal currently.
Okay, so it hasn't been passed, but you're not within that bylaw because you have 2 separate lots, but.
Right, but if you were to look at the lot itself, the 50 by 100 lot, whether that imaginary line is there or not, the development that is allowed on that is very similar in size.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I was trying to make the point across, is whether that imaginary line is there between the 2 lots or not, this structure is allowed there, and it shows that it's not overdevelopment on this side of the lot.
So what's your client's intention with respect to the triplex? Because we've heard.
Sorry, I am the owner, I'm the client.
Oh, I'm sorry. We've heard from the neighbors that there's B&B rentals, short-term B&B rentals, etc. Is that intended to continue?
So again, in regards to the Airbnb, in 2018 and 2019, we rented only our upstairs unit. I don't know where the neighbors got our basement, but it was only our upstairs unit, and it was rented to students during the school year. And in the summers when they left, we would Airbnb for the summer months until the school year started again. And again, this was beneficial for the summer students since they didn't have to pay us rent during the summer months. And this never took away from the local rental housing stock either. Okay, and then since then, we have not been doing this practice, mainly because of the pandemic.
So have you got long-term tenants in your units now, the ones
Correct.
that are open?
Since 2019, yes.
Okay. All right, panel, do you have any other questions? Okay, any comments? We have a motion. Donald?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. I have a lot of issues with this, and they all stem from the fact that this is a corner lot, which obviously has flankage, which creates an opportunity of the backyard of the original lot being a good candidate for a consent or a severance. And I don't think that's the case, because I think what we find in this case particularly is by doing that, you end up with a lot size for the triplex being less than half as what is required. The lot size for the part two being just a little bit more than half. The rear yards in both cases being approximately half of what is required, which all suggests to me that this lot was always intended to be and should remain a single entity. I therefore move refusal of both the consent and the minor variances on the grounds that they don't meet any of the 4 tests under the Planning Act. So my motion is refusal.
Okay, so I made a motion to refuse?
I'm going to second that. I don't believe it's desirable for the lot, and I don't think it respects or reinforces the physical character of the neighborhood. So I will second that motion.
It's interesting because in Toronto, we just approved something like this. As a matter of fact, I think there was 3 of them that we had where they were corner lots and they had a secondary unit that they either built from scratch or it was a garage that they converted and they ended up with, well, they were all in one lot because it was 2 houses on one property. So I'm used to this kind of thing with a small lot in Toronto, probably get approved, but it doesn't necessarily mean it fits within the character in Long Branch. So the motion is for refusal. All in favor? All opposed? All right, your application's refused, sir. Number 25.
Mr. Chair, members, as a note, all the area residents on our attendees list are present on the call at this time.
Thank you. I'm just. Okay, item 25, 3 Maple Bush Avenue.
Good afternoon.
Would you just 1 minute, please? This is to obtain consent to sever the property into 2 undersized residential lots. Mr. Gurtani.
Good afternoon, sir. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Nice to see you all again. I'd like to begin just by way of introduction. Ralph Gurtani is my name. I'm with RGC Design Group. We represent all the planning matters and designed for this application before you this afternoon. My deliberation of the panel.
All right, Mr. Gurtani, what's your address, please?
2201 Finch Avenue West, Suite 27, sir, Toronto.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Since we've been in front of the panel previously, we had a hiatus of some months from the March 2nd, 2022 first meeting. Since that time, at the request of Councillor Nunziata and ourselves, we have organized a community meeting or neighborhood meeting for further discussion, description of the project in its entirety. Many of the neighbors appreciated the opportunity to participate in this discussion. The meeting was also attended by community staff. Our clients who believe in the communication through a good neighbor policy have engaged the neighbors, and we have made a submission of letters of support, but I understand there's also a submission and opposition letter pending as well. With the panel's permission, I'd like to merge both the single consent application together with the 2 minor variances to be jointly presented today. The illustration in front of you I'd like to begin with, it's a visual screenshot. And this plan was prepared for the members' courtesy, specifically identifying the location of our project number 3 Maple Bush Avenue. We're located just west of Weston Road, adjacent to a Shell gas station and a convenience store. The visual shows you as a clear picture of the typical housing styles for the greater neighborhoods to the north and to the south of our property. A quick flyover such as this identifies the many renovated new homes that have been built on lots similar in size and scale on streets on Maple Bush, Cardell, and of course D Avenue to the south. Members, we may suggest that the positive reinvestment in this neighborhood would deem to be a good and appropriate planning for the greater community. By way of public transit, orderly pedestrian realm on a well-defined and organized improved street, access to parklands and walking trails, commercial businesses, all support the increase of 2 single-family homes. Only 1 new unit will be added to replace the existing home that's there now, and that will bring a total of 30 new homes onto the street. Illustration B, please. The subject lot is 50 feet in frontage and is located at the eastern end of the south block. To the east of number 3, again, it's the Shell gas bar and convenience store. To the west of us is a raised bungalow known as number 5, Maple Bush, also located on a 25-foot lot in width. The schedule in front of you demonstrates that 13 of 15 lots on our side, the south side of Maple Bush Avenue, are an average of 25 to 26 feet in width. There are only 2 50-foot lots remaining on this side, one of them being the subject lot. On the north side of Maple Bush Avenue, the map identifies 10 of 15 lots in total that are also between 25 and 26 feet in frontage. Housing stock and form is quite variable and unique, as each lot does respect different architectural layouts. Some of the newer homes incorporated depressed driveways, very typical of the 90s and early 2000s when applications to the City of Toronto supported a driveway style back then. It is our opinion that the proposed lots do in fact represent and reinforce this physical character of the neighborhood. Mr. Chair, members, this application is as unique and singular as is the design of the homes. Hence, the variances before the panel are technical in nature and do follow the form and physical layout of each footprint. The ground floor will include a garage, integrated garage, service spaces, mechanical rooms, and an at-grade rear yard walkout. For better clarity for the participants, the proposed design of the 2 homes incorporates a first and second floor living space of 2,118 square feet in overall size. The basement or main level, depending how you review it, includes an integrated garage of 240 square feet with utility and mechanical spaces equaling 350. Members, we understand the confusion and comments made by some of the neighbors relying on a clear definition of 2-story to 3-story. We've seen this many times on other files and have represented plans in other residential neighborhoods. It is important to understand that as planners, we have to assess this application based on the overall mass of the built form. I respectfully submit that the building envelope will remain the same as what we are presenting is before the panel today, whether the interior spaces and floor plans are designed as a 1, 2, or 3-story single-family home. Illustration C is a visual rendering that helps.
Mr. Grittani, your time is up. If you could wrap up.
I will, sir. Thank you for that. Thank you for your patience. Illustration 3 is just a point of reference that helps identify how rectangular lots on the north side face our rectangular lots on the south side. By seeking relief to maintaining the general intent and purpose of this bylaw, both bylaws, we respectfully submit that this minor variance application does adequately generally comply with the 4 tests of the Act. The zoning bylaw does speak to detached homes as the only permitted building type within the RD zone. This application does in fact meet that requirement. Furthermore, we feel that in our opinion, we support the City of Toronto Community Planning Review, and we feel that this consent file does maintain the vision and mission as established by the City of Toronto Housing Policy by offering focus on strategic management of planning and growth in locations where it is financially sustainable and where it can be developed in compact, efficient forms supported by existing infrastructure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Panel, do you have any questions? Okay. Sylvester Thomas?
Yes,
Yeah. Can we have your name and your address, sir?
yes. You ready for me to speak?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. I'm Sylvester Thomas. I live at 8 Maple Bush Avenue. Just a few brief stuff I need from Mr. Gritani here. First of all, I'm looking at your your map here, site plan revised April 2022. And over on the right side here, you have what do you have here? Imperial and metric. Is he there?
Yes.
Hello?
But you're making
okay,
a submission, sir. We're not having a conversation with Mr. Gattani. He will be responding to your submission.
Okay.
Later. But you.
Okay, so 2934.
You put your questions and then move on to the next.
Okay. I see 2934. Is that the square footage of the house?
Okay, go on.
And if you want to explain to me what does conveyed lot mean, if it's relevant for my information or not, fine. And the height, I've always said that the height is too much for the street. I mean, it's a short street. It doesn't have any, no 3 stories at this point. And his 3 stories is going to pretty well dwarf the bungalows there right beside him there, you know. And, you know, there's another 50-foot lot for sale, was for sale. What's to stop someone from coming in and he want to put 4 stories? Because really, the height that he wants, someone can come in and put 4 stories, maybe around the same height that he wants. You know, put a flat roof on it, and, you know, he has 4 stories. So I'm not fond of the 3-story because I think it will probably distract as far or as opposed to enhance the street. You know, so you know, I'm pro construction. I worked in it for 43 years, so I like construction because it trickles down. Everybody gets a piece. Trades, you know, surveyors, excavators, whatever. I did run machines for 43 years. That was my job. Made a decent living. So I'm for construction. I'm for him building. I'd like to see him build something there. But I think 3 stories is just dwarfing the bungalows on his side. There, I think there are about 1, 2, 4 of them right there beside him. So, and that's my point. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anna Maria Savaglio.
It's Anna Maria Spaglio, and I live at 5 Maple Bush Avenue.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee members. I live right next door to the proposed building, and I would like you just to take into consideration my concerns. The height of the proposed building will be very, very close to my home, and it will cast a very large shadow over my home. And I am concerned about sunlight and light and the changes that it will cause as a result. Also, the structure is quite large, and it will go far back into the backyard of their building site, and there will be if I understand it correctly, a balcony or a a raised deck 9 feet high up. And I'm concerned a great deal about privacy. That will enable them to see completely into my backyard, which I think both of those things put together will considerably disrupt the reasonable enjoyment of my living space. And so these are my concerns, and I just thank you very much for your time.
Right. Thank you. Brian L.O. Shepherd.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Brian Elo Shepherd. I reside at 6 Maple Bush Avenue, directly across the street from the proposed build. My primary focus today of my presentation is really to present an opposition petition and just to highlight that the key issues are height-related variances, and nonetheless, they are variances that, no matter what anyone has to say, this is certainly, I think, within the jurisdiction of this committee. It's really about the enormity of the bill. I'll also need to speak very briefly, and I will highlight very briefly, to the content of the letter I filed yesterday, an opposition letter independent of the petition itself. So with regard to the petition, and before I begin, I wanted to add that this petition has been updated and now bears 14 signatures. One is not shown because it was obtained this morning, but it has been submitted to city staff. Signatories to the petition oppose the construction of the 2-story home because it's oversized and over height. It's really important to note that the opposition petition has not only been considered and endorsed by every single household property on the proposed development, but also all 3 owner-occupied households in closest proximity across the street from the proposed developments. Signatories also include the closest homes to the rear of the property line, a total of 4 households deep on Cardell Avenue. The level of consensus and commitment to the opposition is a very powerful indication of the extent these proposed developments are deemed misplaced and unwelcomed, and how they would disruptively dominate and overshadow a row of neighboring 1-story homes on Maple Bush and tower over and impact the privacy of 5 Maple Bush Avenue and the privacy of the 4 Cardell households. We are hoping that you will be in agreement of the violation of the key elements of the 4 tests. The key issue here is really the walls of over 55 feet deep and 28 feet plus high, plus a roof feature right beside a very quaint 1-story home in a row of others. So in terms of test 1, the issue being that we note the totality and interaction of the many height variances do not equal a change that's minor in both impact and size. In terms of the change being desired, test 2, the change must be desirable for the appropriate development of the site itself and neighboring lands. Again, the shadow impacts are inescapable and extreme. Building 2 overheight, oversized structures approximately 4 feet from the line directly beside a 1-story house, followed by a string of homes in a row, is not desirable or appropriate. Test 3, the change must meet the general intent and purposes of the bylaw, such as trying to maintain appropriate relationships between buildings. I think I've spoken quite a bit about the impact that this has to the relationship between buildings, and it's very clear. The test 4 must meet the intent of the official plan and include respecting and reinforcing the neighborhood's character. The size, height, and 3-story design of the proposed builds not only fails to respect and reinforce the neighborhood's character, but are out of step with it. Once again, we respectfully ask the chair and committee to please respect the extent of opposition, and please agree with us that this proposal does not pass the 4 tests. At the special request of residents on Cardell, through this process, I've been asked to specifically highlight, without detracting attention from the fact that they agree with all the building size and excessive height concerns, but they also oppose any variance in support of the proposed elevated platforms. They are simply too close to the rear property lines, and the privacy impact is enormous. So in summary, as a result of this petition and the commitments I made to bring forward concerns of the 14 households, We collectively ask the committee to recognize the aggregate impacts of the height-related variance and therefore do not approve variances 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And in particular, for the privacy of the Cardell residents and the livability and enjoyment of their properties, do not approve any requested variances permitting any variance to exceed maximum bylaw maximums for the elevated platforms. All along, the signatories, and I can speak for myself and everyone I've encountered, welcome the opportunity to engage in public consultation and discuss alternative proposals. And in fact, we would have welcomed discussing this proposal initially, but unfortunately, the recommendations to follow pre-application consultation was not followed, and that was a missed opportunity. But nonetheless, any proposal within the acceptable envelope of appropriately sized two-story precedents as they currently exist on Maple Bush Avenue is a very welcome discussion. I'll also clarify that there is no challenge relative to the consent application. We wish to work cooperatively. Now, I mentioned I would speak very briefly to the objection letter, and in brief it will be. That's unless, of course, the chair and committee have any questions. The one thing I ask, I hope that the committee members are familiar with the contents of the objection letter of yesterday, particularly with respect to the May 10th staff report and when evaluating the applicant's support position. I also note that Anna Maria Salvaggio, who was the previous presenter, was present for most of that encounter. Just in closing, I think it's pretty clear what the issues are, and we're really hoping that you see this through the eyes of the community, through the eyes of every single property that borders the proposal, and also from the houses right across the street and of a number of residents. There has been some confusion relative to the petition process, and that has induced a lot of confusion around what the true facts are. But nonetheless, the petition I present you with is based on fact. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have, Mr. Chair. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Panel, do you have any questions? Mr. Grittani?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We received most of these comments previously. We've had very constructive criticism and meetings with the individuals, both by ourselves and by the owners who've been diligent. Some of the high level comments that were made, I mean, the process of conveyance is straightforward, where in a severance there's a retained lot and a conveyed lot, which it's demonstrated on my site plan. As far as the size of the building, it's outlined in the chart on our site plan, identifying the total square footage divided by the lower level and the 2 livable floors above. With respect to our immediate neighbor, we've benefited the side yard by increasing the setback from the current house by approximately a foot. Therefore, respectively, we have 1.2 meters on the mutual side shared with number 5, and we have 1.2 meters on the opposite side of the retained lot adjacent to the service center. In essence, when I look at it, these two houses almost form a buffer of sorts, Mr. Chair, between an automotive service petroleum station and the residential component. I just want to bring to Mr. Shepherd's attention the fact that with the reiteration of height and impact of height, I want them to realize, the neighbors to realize, that the variance we're seeking only applies to the front roofscape. And you can see we have a multi-point roof. The front portion represents 30% of the overall footprint of the house. The 70%, which is the main hip roof, that's the balance of the roof, does in fact comply with the height limit as defined by the city. So that was one of the avenues we took with city staff when they came back to us with that concern. The sitting deck that's positioned at the back of the houses was reduced 50% in scale and size, and we did in fact introduce a privacy screen to prevent overview from both neighbors between the new home to the west and number 3. So I hope I've been able to address some of the questions. But as I said earlier, it's a good application that respects the new policies, and we feel comfortable with the test of the act, sir.
Sir, are there 3-story houses in the immediate vicinity?
Well, again, it's that definition of 3 stories. I mean, if you travel down the street, as I mentioned in my presentation, to look at numbers 18, 18A, 19, 21, and 23, they're wonderful new homes that were built. They had the benefit, if you will, of depressing the driveways. So in essence, the whole scale of the house was lower. Most of the houses on the street, in fact, have basements. We don't have a basement. We have to respect the new policies of the city with stormwater management and build our houses starting at slab on grade. So you could look at some of those houses and call them 3 stories. You may look at ours and call it 3 stories. But the bottom line is that this exercise is based on the massing, sir. It's based on the overall height and volume of space. We could, in fact, leave it the height it is and call it a 1-story home. Or we could call it a 2-story. It ultimately comes down to how we divide up the interior spaces within this envelope.
You could call it an elephant if you wanted, but it's not an elephant. Okay. Thank you. Panel, do you have any questions? So we've had a lot of these applications, and we get them all the time in East York. There's areas, streets after streets of 1-story bungalows, and somebody comes in and proposes to build a new house, and it almost doesn't matter how big it is. It's always a monster house. It's always too big. But this one, and I always thought you got to build in these areas, you got to build a transition type house. And I would think that it'd be a true 2-story house that may reach the height of the bylaw, but not exceed it, and have some physical characteristics resembling the character of the neighborhood. This doesn't seem to do that for me. So I wouldn't support this application. Any other comments, Stan?
I'm kind of torn on this one. I would very much support the consent. I believe it's a site that needs to be split. But I'm concerned with the number of variances, and that tends to influence me to think that it's a bit of an overbuild for that site.
Yeah. So Donald?
My thinking is similar to yours and the chair's, the overbuild concern.
Yeah. Laura?
But Stan, I agree with you that the severance makes sense. I mean, the lot sizes are. It's with everything on both sides of the street, up and down, north and south sides.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it needs a severance, and the home can be a little bit bigger than the others because it is a buffer from the commercial use. But I'm still struck by the number of variances required.
Yeah. Michi?
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Heard, dwarfing, and it, just looking at the side profile of the home, it's a big wall. It has a very big, bulky presence, and it's 2 single detached dwellings. And I know that, I also mentioned that the R zone permits these, it's the only use permitted in R zone, which is, sort of the problem that we're seeing more and more as we're looking to add more units and encourage, multi-unit housing, but a bylaw that permits, single-family dwellings. So I'm a bit back and forth, but I do feel it is a bit too, the massing is just a bit too overbearing.
I agree. I think it's an overbuild.
Looks like a good site for a couple of semis.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Semis would be good,
But for what's
not
being
permitted.
proposed, I'd be inclined to move a motion for refusal.
But would you approve the consent to sever?
Can we do that?
The variances? I think we can do that.
I'm fine to approve the consent to sever, but to deny the variances.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Donald?
That approval subject to the standard conditions of consent. And yes, the rest of your motion, I support the refusal of the variances on grounds that they don't meet the 4 tests.
Through the chair, should the committee wish to approve the consent, there are ECS conditions as well, and urban forestry conditions.
Sorry, yes, urban forestry condition 3 and the usual engineering
And there are some site-specific engineering conditions, which I'm assuming you'd like to impose as well.
Yes, sorry, I didn't see them. Are they in the added material?
I didn't see them either.
Just one moment here. Let me just check.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I was under the impression that we could not approve without approving the variances.
It's the other way around, I believe, that you can't approve the minor variances without approving the consent.
I think the ECS conditions tie it to the site plan, which would not be
applicable
to our decision. So
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so what is the motion? Do we have those conditions?
My understanding is to approve the consent subject to the standard conditions of consent. Subject as well to urban forestry condition 3, and to refuse the applications for minor variances on the grounds that they don't satisfy the 4 tests.
Okay, is that your motion, Stan?
Yes, please.
Yes, and Donald, you seconded. All in favor? Your application for consent is approved. Your application with condition and your variance applications are refused. Number 27. 181 Strathern. And the purpose of this application is to construct a 2-story west side addition, which will contain an attached garage, a 2-story rear addition, a complete 2nd-story addition above the existing dwelling, a new covered front porch, a new rear deck, and a rear basement walkout.
Mr. Chair and members, I'd like to bring to your attention the area resident is present on the call at this time.
Okay, so can we have Kelvin Lowe?
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Lowe. Would you give us your name and your address, please?
My name is Kelvin Lowe. My address is 3575 14th Avenue, Unit 18, Markham.
Okay. All right, would you tell us what this is about, please?
So I'm here to represent the owner of 181 Stratton Avenue. I'm here before you to ask for 3 zoning variants. So the first one we are asking for is to have 0.66 FSI instead of the zoning only permit for 0.4 FSI. And we have been working on this with the planning staff. Previously, we have asked for 0.78, and now we have reduced it to 0.66. The second one is we are asking for 0.9 meter west side yard setback instead of 1.2 as required by the bylaws. The last one is we are asking for 1.07 west side yard setback for the rear deck. And furthermore, we have two supporting letters from both sides of neighbors that are fully in support of our applications.
So you no longer need the variance number 3?
The one that on the screen is crossed out, right? So the one that is in red is for the front yard setback, and we have adjusted our site plan to meet the zoning compliance.
Okay. All right. Do you have anything more to say before I go to your neighbor?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Panel, any questions? Okay. Rudy Utzmuller.
My name is, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
My name is Rudy Atzmueller. I live at 112 Tree Lawn Parkway in Toronto, but I do own the house at 187 Strathnairn Avenue, across the street and a couple of houses to the east.
Okay.
I guess my first real concern is the size of the physical property that is proposed. It's a 0.66 density versus an existing or a permitted of 0.40. So that's quite a bit larger than what is allowed on the area. So was questioning why would that be allowed, and if it is, I would oppose that. One of the things I do want to make note is that the two-story house in the area, there is no other ones on that side of the street. It is, yes, a little bit larger than anything else that's nearby, so definitely not conducive to the neighborhood, or at least visually. Both sides of the house have very large walls and would be definitely viewable from the street because the homes beside them are just small bungalows. I understand that, you know, we need more space for homes, but again, very unsightly, I think, comparatively to the neighborhood. The side access on the west side of the house being only 0.9 meter space is a little bit, again, too small access for anything to get through to the house or to the side. And I think, again, it's too large, the home on the property itself. As for shade, same thing, just too tall. In reference, I lived at another home that we had a two-story home, and yes, there was bungalows beside us. They built a two-story home, which was fine, and I understand, but the amount of sunlight loss, because it was built to the south of us, that was in our home was quite extensive, and we really missed that, the nice sunlight coming through our kitchen and living room windows from the south. I guess that's really my concern. I don't have any documentation or anything to support myself. I just a neighbor that owns a house that wants to make a concern. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
So is your house 2 houses or 3 houses up the street from this house?
I would say 3 houses to the east on the north side, so across the street, yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lowe?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. Do you want to make some comments, Mr.
For the FSI, in regard to FSI, we have been working with the planning staff extensively from November till now, and we have bring it down to 0.66. And in conclusion, because of FSI, if we adjust FSI to smaller or higher, it didn't really adjust the streetscape. So we have no effect on how we perceive on the front. But then it just the matters of how deep we going to the back lot of the house. That's how we work with our the planning staff with the city. And then if you look at the right across the street or in the almost immediate adjacent neighborhood, there's a lot of two-story house around the area. It happens on our street. Nobody haven't started to develop the street yet. But if you look right across on the northeast side, there's abundance of two-story house. That is much larger than what we are proposed. Then I believe what we are proposing fit within the neighborhood. And as for the 0.9 meters neighbor, the 0.9 meters of side setback, yes, we are asking for a variance of that, but the immediate adjacent neighbor provide a letter of support. They are happy with our development and they are okay with it. And I believe this kind of is already have precedence before that, like in 147 Stratton Avenue and 167 Stratton Avenue as well, has been previously approved for the side yard setback. And for the sunlight that the person who brings up the issue, I don't believe our development will affect his property because it's right across the street and it's a few houses down. And I don't think it poses a problem with him. And then again, both neighbor on the left and the right are okay with our development. They're in support. And thank you. And that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you. Have any questions, panel?
No, just comments. I did take a walk up the street on Street View, and the applicant is absolutely right. There are some two-story homes in the next block, that just this particular block hasn't really been developed, but certainly there are two-story homes on the street. So if no one has any questions or comments, I'm prepared to make a motion.
All right. I just like to say this sounds to me like the kind of transitional home that I was talking about in one-story bungalow areas. It's I figured it's approximately 2,100 square feet. It's not too big. You can't expect that people are going to put up 800 square foot bungalows anymore because you know, with one bathroom, etc. So I think this is quite appropriate. And go ahead, Laura, and make your motion.
Yeah, and it's actually between, it's not, these are not even bungalows. These are 1.5 stories. So to jump from a 1.5 story to a 2-story is not a huge jump. And so I'm prepared to make that motion. I think this meets the 4 tests. I think it's minor. I certainly think it's desirable. And I'm happy to make I don't believe there are any conditions, so I'm happy to make a motion for approval subject to no conditions, 0 conditions.
So I'll second that as we're approving the revised plans.
Okay, all in favor? Have your approval. Thank you, sir. Number 28, 33 Loma Road. And the purpose of this application, I lost my thing. Is to construct a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. Mr. Ergan?
Yes, Mr. Chair. My name is Nadeem Irfan, architect, NIA Architects Inc., 10 Milner Business Court, Suite 710, Scarborough, Ontario, M1B 3C6.
Okay, so my computer froze. So do you, I don't think we need a presentation on this matter. I take it into committee. Do you have anything to say to the panel before we take it into committee?
Mr. Chair, we have worked extensively with the planning staff. The proposal before you is a significant revision from the original application, which was deferred on November 30th, 2021. Since then, we have, reduced the FSI, eave height, and wall height. We have also, homeowner has also reached out to the neighbor who was objecting the previous application, so they have resolved their matters. Out of 6 variances, now there are only 3 variances, and we understand Forestry has some conditions, so we acknowledge that, and we're happy to work with them.
All right, thank you. Panel, do you have any questions?
No, and if no one has any questions, I'm prepared to go ahead and make a motion.
Go ahead.
I believe this meets the 4 tests. It's minor in nature, and I move for approval subject to urban forestry condition number 1, I believe.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Donald, all in favor? Stan, there you are. Okay, you have your approval, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 29, 85 Ravensbourne Crescent. And the purpose of this application is to construct a covered rear yard deck. Mr. LeBlanc.
Mr. Chair and members, Mr. LeBlanc, the property owner, is not present on the call, but the agent, Edward Brodeurs, is present on the call. Go ahead,
Okay.
Edward, you're unmuted.
Ed Broders here.
Yes, we have your address, sir.
I'm at 2191 Young Street, Suite 2708, M4S 388.
Okay. I don't think that we're going to need a presentation from you with respect to this matter. Do you have anything to say to the panel before I take it into committee?
I just believe that we have a small addition that's just abutting directly to the house. We're surrounded by large trees. I've spoken to the neighbors behind and mostly behind the house, and nobody has objected.
All right, thank you. Panel, any questions, comments, or do we have a motion? Yes, Donald?
Yes, I find the variances requested meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I move approval of the conditions.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Michi, all in favor? Have your approval, thank you.
Thank you.
Number 30, 379 Prince Edward Drive North.
Mr. Chair and members, I'd like to bring to your attention that both area residents are present on the call.
Okay, so the purpose of this application is to construct a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. Mr. Engelman?
Yes, good afternoon, Sir Chair and fellow committee members. David Eagleman, 900 The East Mall, Suite 300.
Right, okay, so you have some opposition, so perhaps you could give us a short presentation.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, before I start my presentation, I would like to note that there is a small error on the public notice that I would like to correct.
Yeah, I see. Variance number 2 should say the proposed driveway will have a width of 4.97 meters.
That is correct. That was not the error I was referring to, but that is correct as well.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead with your error.
Yes. So through you, Mr. Chair, the bylaw section reference for variance number 1 should read 903.10.35A, not 906.10.35A. However, I don't believe this would necessitate new public notice, considering that the variances are identified correctly.
Yeah, and I don't believe that the error in variance number 2 is going to nullify the notice either.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, well, but I'm not the guy that makes the decision. The panel has to make that decision. So you go ahead, because we have people in opposition. You give your presentation. We'll leave these issues for the panel.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chair, before getting into the variances, I would like to note that this application was previously deferred from the March 10th, 2022 hearing date in order to consult further with planning staff. We have since consulted extensively with community planning staff regarding this application and have made a number of revisions to the proposal and requested variances to their satisfaction, as indicated in the report they have issued for today's hearing date. Additionally, I have reviewed the transportation report as well as the urban forestry memorandum regarding this application, and we are acceptable to the recommended conditions from both departments. Regarding the variances, variance number 1 pertains to the proposed driveway width, or excuse me, variance number 1 pertains to the proposed gross floor area. The proposed gross floor area of 368 square meters, or 0.71 times the lot area, will be spread over 2 floors, and as well as will be within the roof line and will be in keeping with the existing character of the neighborhood. The incorporation of living space in the roof line mitigates any potential impacts associated with an increase in GFA, while also providing the residing family with additional living space in a considerate and efficient manner. Excluding the living space in the roof line, the proposed GFA results in an FSI of 0.61 times the lot area, which is only 0.11 times, or 52.02 square meters, or 560 square feet over what is permitted as of right. The proposal is compliant with the maximum permitted building length, building depth, and height, as well as all landscaping and setback requirements, which further demonstrates that the proposed massing is in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. There have also been a number of approvals within the neighborhood for GFA or FSI, such as 376 Prince Edward Drive North, approved at 362.1 square meters, 371 Prince Edward Drive North, approved at 315.17 square meters, or 0.6 times the lot area, 64 The Kingsway, approved at 493.13 square meters, or 0.82 times the lot area, and 26 King George's Road, approved at 414.49 square meters. Variance number 2 pertains to the proposed driveway width. The proposed driveway width is a currently existing condition on the subject property, and the existing driveway is proposed to be maintained through this application. The proposal will maintain the intent and purpose of the bylaw permission for the maximum driveway width by providing front yard landscaping and soft landscaping in compliance with the requirements. Additionally, if the proposed garage was enlarged to 4.97 meters and an entirely new driveway was proposed, the driveway width of 4.97 meters would be permitted as of right. However, this would reduce usable living area within the dwelling for the residing family and would necessitate removing the existing driveway as well as a new curb cut. The proposed driveway width will maintain an existing condition on the subject property and will be in keeping with the existing character of the neighborhood. This is a very minor application, only 2 variances. We've worked extensively with planning staff to make a number of revisions, and based on the provided justification, I'm of the opinion that this proposal fits in with both the existing and planned context for the neighborhood, is consistent with the redevelopment trends along Prince Edward Drive North and the broader neighborhood context, and for these reasons, I believe this application represents good planning and meets the 4 tests under Section 45(1) of the Planning Act. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
All right. Any questions, panel? Okay, let's move on to John Percy, Mar Percy.
Thank you very much for listening to our concerns. We're John and Myra Percy at 381 Prince Edward Drive. Much as we'd like to support the plans of our next door neighbors and friends, unfortunately, we cannot support variance number 1, a request for an increase in the GFA ratio from 0.5 to 0.71, a factor of 42%. This is not a minor variance, it's a major one. In the original plan, this factor was 0.76, so the reduction in the revised plan is very small. And the floor area is being artificially reduced by arbitrarily describing part of the third floor as uninhabited. So the actual ratio is closer to 1.5 or 50% if this area is actually inhabited. And this does not include the covered patio, which further increases the volume and footprint of the building. The third floor space is perfectly habitable. It has skylights and 6 dormers. Part of it is already designated on the plans as an art studio. And there's nothing to stop the present owners or future owners from declaring and quickly making the whole floor habitable. An obvious use would be as an art gallery for the display and storage of paintings from the present owner's painting studio. In a letter of May the 3rd distributed to the neighbors by the owners, they state that this space is, quote, large enough to finish part of it for living space, end of quote. There is nothing to stop all of it from being finished. In any case, the volume corresponding to a larger GFA is still there, adding to the massiveness of the building. Secondly, this is not an appropriate development for the location and community that it's in. It's a monster 3-story house to be proposed for a non-monster lot. A walk down Prince Edward Drive clearly shows that they've pronounced the proposed structure would be the largest on the street. In particular, between Bloor and Kingsway, the numbers of houses of various sizes are on Prince Edward. 2 1.5-story, 29 2-story, 3 2 1/4-story, and 1 2.5-story. The 1 2.5-story house is narrow enough to have a driveway. In fact, there are no houses on these blocks which do not have either a driveway or a garage on one or usually both sides to separate them from the next door house. All of these houses on these blocks also have peaked roofs, not flat ones. There are no houses approaching 3 stories. And none of these houses are at the minimum distance from both of their neighbors on both sides. We doubt that any of the other houses have 4 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, and an elevator. The existing dimensions or the required dimensions for houses on Prince Edward Drive North are not arbitrary. They are values which are consistent with respect for other property owners and with the character of the community, which is especially important for the Kingsway. The Kingsway community is defined by medium-large houses, almost all with peaked roofs, set back well from the street and well separated from each other with abundant trees and grass. Now, this variance affects us personally. We will be living in the shadow, literally, of a monster house looming up from very close to our south property line. The negative effects are both practical and aesthetic. We will have an almost featureless, except for what is labeled as a fake chimney, 3-story wall, uncomfortably close to our south property line, depriving us of even more sunlight than at present. The depth of the house is almost twice that of ours, blocking even more sunlight. And furthermore, if the covered porch at the back is ever closed in, the effective size of the house will be even larger. It certainly makes our house less attractive and livable. The proposed building has a very large footprint, especially when the covered patio, driveways, and pathways, etc., are included. We are therefore concerned about the drainage, runoff, and flooding, which, according to others in the neighborhood, can be problematic for new or existing dwellings when the buildings cover such a large fraction of the lot. And there may certainly be a loss of more trees as well as grass, which are important for both aesthetic and practical reasons. In summary, the proposed building has the maximum possible length, width, and height, and with a partial flat roof has high walls and volume significantly exceeding by almost 50% the permitted size, a major variance, quite out of keeping with other houses in the neighborhood. So thank you very much. Thanks also to our other neighbors who have also expressed opposition to this proposal. Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Perry, I just wanted to ask you, you just said something about this exceeds by 50% the authorized? And what were you saying was,
Well, I'm making the argument that the third floor of this building is in fact perfectly livable. The owners have implied that it can be converted into livable space. An art gallery or an art studio is part of life. So the fact that it's designated as an art studio to me means that it's already used for a living purpose.
okay, thank you. Schreier and Ursula Ahmad.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, we
Okay,
can.
this is Shariar Ahmed. And I would like to support John very much of what he said so far.
What's your address, sir?
I'm 2 doors up from the building. I'm at 383 Prince Edward Drive North.
Okay. Go ahead.
Currently, I'm sorry, currently the house is immediately to the north of us, which was approved for a rebuild late last year, has been torn down and is being rebuilt. They did, in fact, change their length and the width to come pretty close to the maximum allowed in the law. This one here, however, is going to be about 3,961 square feet, almost 4,000 square feet, will be the biggest house on Prince Edward. It has 8 bathrooms, has including the bedrooms in the basement and stuff. It has at least 5 bedrooms, and it has a big covered porch in the back, which if they do cover it or enclose it in, it'll make it even bigger. If as John said, they actually finish off the rest of the third floor. It's called a third floor, 3-story building. So if they finish off the third story, it'll make it even that much bigger. So the footprint, the size, the volume of the outside of the building is definitely gigantic compared to anything that's exists in this area. The as John said, that a house that size next door to him will rob him of all the sunlight that's due. One of the things that on all of these drawings, the building drawings they show, and the lessons learned for us, is that the building drawings don't show the requirement for shoring. And for those who don't know what shoring is an 8-foot wall that's built between the basement of the new building and our house. As such, we had a protected black walnut tree that had to be cut down because of shoring. In the case of 393 of the new house that's being built 2 doors south of us, that's going to be so close to John's garage that I'm afraid that it's going to damage the garage. So one thing going forward, and especially for forestry, they should be totally aware of how the shoring is going to be placed, because the shoring is 8-9 feet deep, and it ruins the roots of trees. We actually had to have our tree cut down, or they cut our tree down. Where they promised to preserve it in the drawings, and that's what happened. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the effect of a house this big on a lot size that's relatively small, no trees, very little grass on it. What is that going to do to the water, to the drainage in the area? And the biggest concern I've got is if we start giving in to these people who are building houses that are 50% bigger than the maximum allowed, what is this place going to look like? And where's the credibility? We say that the biggest house should be 50% of the lot area, and they go to 60, 70%. We lose all credibility in our control systems. So that's what I've got to say, and I hope you can accept that. Thank you very much for letting me talk.
All right, thank you. Panel, any questions? Mr. Eagleman?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. To respond to the concerns of the neighbors, I will note that You know, as I mentioned in my presentation, this application was previously deferred as a result of planning staff recommending deferral, and both neighbors who are here today have expressed concerns at the previous hearing, and we took those concerns into consideration as well as planning staff's concerns. And we have made revisions to the proposal to planning staff satisfaction. I will note that the original proposal was very minor as well. There was only 4 variances, and the variances were very minor. However, planning staff did raise concerns, and the neighbors as well. So we went back to the drawing board to make further revisions, and we believe these revisions are appropriate and they satisfy the concerns of both planning staff and the neighbors. In regards to the comment about this being a monster house and the GFA is very major for the neighborhood, as I noted again in my presentation, there have been quite a few approvals for FSI/GFA within this neighborhood. Just across the street at 371 Prince Edward Drive, it was approved for 362 square meters, which is only 6 square meters less than what we are proposing today. 371 Prince Edward Drive was approved at 315, and then on King George's, which is just to the north of the subject property, there are very large homes, some at I'm just pulling it up here. Some homes on King George's have, you know, square footage of 414 square meters at 26 King George's, 65 King George's, 403 square meters. So there are dwellings in this neighborhood that are of a very similar size, and this is not a 3-story dwelling. This is a 2-story dwelling with living space in the roof line. It will appear as a 2-story dwelling from the street because that's what it is. And I recognize that there are dormers on the front main wall. However, the GFA can be removed from the attic space and the dwelling will appear exactly the same as it is. So through you, Mr. Chair, I believe this application represents good planning and meets the 4 tests. I believe it is appropriate for the area. There are only 2 variances in front of you, which is a testament to how this is appropriate for the neighborhood. And I will note that 3 stories are permitted in this neighborhood. There is no maximum height for the number of stories within this neighborhood. It is only subject to a height of 9.5 meters. So theoretically, you could build a 3-story house as of right, so long as you don't go past the 9.5 meter maximum. And I will, lastly, I will just note that a lot of the neighbors' comments were based on speculation that the owners will do things after the fact that we are not currently seeking permission for. I will note that that will not take place, and if it does, there are appropriate courses of action that the neighbors can take to ensure that the city is aware of those actions and that notices are issued for those actions. However, those are not the intention of my client to undertake work that we are not seeking approval for here today. And I will note that the committee can only consider what is in front of them today, not items of speculation. And lastly, just to note that in regards to the Ahmed's comments about the shoring, that is something that will be dealt with through the permit process and is not within the purview of the committee. So those are my submissions. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Engelman, what's the existing FSI?
The existing FSI through you, Mr. Chair, I do not have that number in front of me.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Laura.
If there are 8 bathrooms now, how many bathrooms were there when you first brought this to committee? I'm curious. I think it's a little disingenuous to not count in the 3rd floor as living space. I really do. I think it is disingenuous. I think that that's a misnomer, really. I'm going to find it really hard to support this application, as I really don't think it's desirable for the lot. And I'm really worried about the Kingsway becoming like Forest Hill. I think Forest Hill has been largely ruined by homes that really had no business being built. And so many beautiful old heritage homes were torn down. And I think it's really a great loss to the city of Toronto. So I would hate to see the Kingsway end up the same way. So those are just my comments. And I'm sorry that Anita Boyd Diamond didn't join us today, because I really found her letter pretty bang on. She was great, especially comment number 2. But yeah, so I won't be supporting this application today.
Okay. Any further comments?
I'm just going to make a comment that I unfortunately lost connection or connectivity with everyone, so I missed the majority of the first resident's presentation. So not having had the benefit of that, I'm going to recuse myself from this.
Okay. I find it interesting that in Etobicoke, the applicants seem to work very hard with the planning staff, something that doesn't happen in Toronto, and they accordingly get their number of variances and the variance requests down to a minimum, which is a good thing. So we don't have here a variance for length or height. The only one is the
FSI.
FSI, which is a little high, but I don't think it's out of the ordinary, and it's supported by the planning staff. So,
and through you, Mr. Chair, I apologize for interrupting. If I could just respond to Member Alderson's comment about it being disingenuous to not count the living space in the attic. I will just note that,
Mr. Chair, members, I'm sorry, but I've muted the agent because you guys are in committee right now and trying to make a decision.
Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't know who it was initially. So
I thought maybe we just lost him.
yeah, no, I think it's not appropriate that he come in when we're in committee. So, and with respect to those areas that are there but not habitable, I think we've got to go with the planning. If they did the measurements, so I think that we've got to take the advice of the planning staff, and it's 0.71 times the lot area. I don't think we should be speculating like the neighbors are doing as to what it's going to be used for or not. So Donald, do you have anything you want to say?
Well, yeah, I think I'm very much influenced by the fact that this house doesn't require any yard variances, height variances, lot coverage variance. FSI in itself isn't really noticeable unless it offends some of those other variance areas, especially the width of the building, its height and its depth. This house is being built within the approved building envelope and beneath the approved height. So yeah, my thinking is it's reasonable and supportable. And if I were to make a motion, it would be to recommend approval of it.
Okay, let's hear what Michi has to say. You're muted, Michi.
Thank you. I think I would have to agree with Donald there, Mr. Taylor. Just for the sheer fact of there only being 2 variances that we're looking at, and just judging those by, you know, the lack of other variances on this application.
Okay, so Donald, did you want to bring a motion?
Yeah, before I do, I just want to speak to my colleague Laura for a minute. I hear what you're saying about the Forest Hill analogy. And, you know, sometimes zoning provisions result in unintended consequences. But I guess the way I look at it, we've got to deal with what's before us, and we've got a set of zoning standards that, you know, if something is closely meets those standards, you know, I feel compelled to approve it. So, yeah, my motion would be to approve it for aforementioned reasons. I find it meets the 4 tests. And that motion would be subject to urban forestry condition 2, the community planning department condition. And I would like to ask staff about transportation, who commented last time but did not this time. Does their previous comment still stand, or did they just miss their opportunity, or have they changed their mind, or how do we treat their comment?
Well, I would suggest that given that transportation services has not commented on the most recent circulation, and they are circulated, they were circulated this agenda package, I would count that as transportation having no comments.
I agree, and I accept that. So my motion stands.
Okay, Michi, you second that motion? Okay. And you're recusing yourself, Stan?
And I'm opposed.
Okay, so all in favor? All right, 3. And you're dissenting,
I'm
Laura?
dissenting, yep.
Okay, all right, 3-1, 1 recusal. You have your approval, sir. Thank you. And that ends the list, the agenda for this afternoon at 5:12 p.m.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye, take care.
Thanks, Donald.
Thank you, Donald.
Thank you.
Thanks, Donald.
Take care.